Good morning to everyone. Friends, today we have with us an eminent atmospheric scientist and Secretary University Grants Commission, Dr. Akhilesh Gupta ji. Sir, on behalf of Dr. CC and our team, I would like to welcome you on this EduSet nationwide network.
Thank you.
And I also welcome Dr. Anand and Dr. Rajesh Kumarji, scientist from DST, who today joined us to discuss with Sir. Friends, his talk on climate change and India's development pathway is of prime importance that certainly needs a global debate to save the earth. Before I request Sir, briefly I would point out some from his resume that Dr. Gupta served the DST as head climate change program, coordinated to national missions on climate change, has published more than 100 research papers, 200 articles, 300 reports, and co-authored of 3 books also, and lot many more. So now I request Sir to please initiate and start your presentation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Sunil, and good afternoon to all of you. In fact, this topic, as Dr. Sunil mentioned, is a topic which is globally being debated. The world over concern on climate change and global warming are becoming a topic for debate, not only among the scientists, but among the economists, the social scientists, the political scientists, and therefore, the climate change is no longer a science issue, it is a multidisciplinary issues concerning several branches of humanity and social sciences as well as science. The theme which I have chosen, the climate change India's development pathway, is in line with this kind of multidisciplinary the nature of this thing, that what climate change as a science subject would have impact on the society, and what should be the country response to that. A country like India need to respond, and the entire climate change action plan was created around that concern and the impact. Well, just for completeness, because of course, climate change is a subject which is known to most of us, but still it is what is global warming. So, just a very brief description of what it means, that the incoming radiation coming on the earth, it is the earth which absorbed the incoming radiation and re-radiated back to the atmosphere. It is that re-radiation which is coming from the earth, which is absorbed by the some of the gases, include the carbon dioxide, and radiate back to the earth. That means it contribute towards warming of the earth atmosphere, and that is this kind of effect we call it greenhouse effect, because it creates a greenhouse in the atmosphere, where you have the layer of atmosphere getting warmer and warmer with time. With that, we go to the next level. I thought climate change is a topic many people, as I said, understand differently, but it is a topic which consists of three components: the climate change science, that is on the cause side of that, and the climate change impact side of this thing, which we call, which is linked to the climate change response, is two components, the adaptation and the mitigation. But important point which I must mention here, that the climate change science, the science and technology of the climate change basically is the core issue. Unless we understand the science of it, the all other actions cannot be initiated, and therefore, science and technology are at the core of all climate change action world over. Now, let me now give a glimpse of what climate change is at global scale. And here is a very interesting slide which is showing that the carbon dioxide content in the atmosphere during past 650,000 years, 6,50,000 years back, what kind of changes atmosphere has witnessed in terms of concentration of carbon dioxide. And look at this, that in the so far in the in all those years, the carbon dioxide content has never exceeded 300 part per million of volume, except for last 100 to 150 years, when the carbon dioxide content has crossed that limit of 300 part per million of volume, and now it is something around 400 part per million. So, that is what we say, this is without precedence, and that is why the climate change which we today discuss is with reference to those kind of changes which have taken place between in the last century, and it is believed, now it is without any doubt, so much research has been done saying that all these changes which have taken place during past 100 years is man made. We call it anthropogenic. That changes is not natural. All those changes which are depicted here, all natural changes, but past 100 years changes in the carbon dioxide content in the atmosphere is because of the man made. What are those man made things which is contributing? There are four main reasons, main contributors to this anthropogenic emission. One is industry, the businesses. We have different kind of businesses, industry, power plants and several such things. Transport is another sector which is contributing immensely to these man-made carbon dioxide emissions. And with growth of population, growth of all other facilities, the transport is becoming very carbon centric source. The third one is domestic, with kind of changing lifestyle world over. The appliances at domestic level also becoming more and more sophisticated, and they are emitting lot of carbon dioxide. For example, if it is a refrigerator or it is air conditioner and all such kind of thing will emit. And the last one is agriculture. Agriculture, people normally think that the plants absorb the carbon dioxide, they do, but agriculture also contribute towards emission, and that emission comes in terms of methane released from many of the activities of agriculture. For example, the paddy field emits the methane, and methane is very potential carbon dioxide, potential greenhouse gas. And that is, so these are four reasons for the man made activity of carbon dioxide emission. Look at this diagram. This is another interesting diagram showing that the change in temperature taking place in past 10 million years. And an interesting part is that the question which is asked today, that is the temperature today is unprecedented whether such temperature were there in the past or not, and whether the future temperature which is being predicted by the climate experts, whether those temperatures are going to be unprecedented. This diagram shows that neither the present temperature nor the temperature of the future are going to be unprecedented. They have been there earlier, and that is the interesting thing, that this is a logarithmic plot, and therefore it is not a linear one. There are glacial period and interglacial periods. The glacial period are larger in its duration. A glacial period, which we call it ice age, will be for a lakh year, but the interglacial period, which is warmer period, where the humans and other like the one which we are experiencing today, are shorter in duration, maybe 15,000 years or something like that. Long time back, if you look at the Miocene period, and that time the temperature were more than the today's temperature, and the projected temperature which we are here we have towards end. Look at this temperature projection. They are actually, if you go back, you find that prior to the Miocene period, the age of dinosaur and all, such temperatures were there, and that is the worry which we have, that the temperature in the future, suppose we go very high, whether that will have impact on the human being, whether whether we can withstand the temperature range which are going to be there in future. That is a question which we today ask. Now, there are, if you look at the IPCC fourth report of the IPCC, it is very clear that climate change, despite all uncertainties, is a reality today. And this is important, that to realize that many people may say that temperatures are changing, whether it is going to get reverse and all. Temperature change are definitely going to be taking place in future also, and there will be some uncertainty in terms of how much temperature will change, how much rainfall will occur in future. All those uncertainties are there, but despite those kind of questions which are still not answered today, we can say that climate change is taking place. And there are three at least clear messages coming from the IPCC without any uncertainty. One, that the greenhouse gas in the atmosphere is increasing in concentration. The second one is the global temperature is increasing with time and has increased in the past 100 years. And the third one is the sea level rise. Sea level will rise in future and have risen in the past because of the reason of two reasons. One is, of course, melting of various North Pole and South Pole ice, that is one reason. But second simple reason is that with temperature rise of sea, the expansion taking place, and because that sea, the water, any fluid which expand will also have the level rise in the sea, and that is how sea level is taking place. The last one, which is the fourth one, of course, but it is not part of the main conclusion, but that shows that the recent 5 decades have shown that the number of extreme weather events are also their severity and frequency increasing with time, and in the past it has increased. You can see, look at this, these are the natural disaster frequency, it has increased. In fact, 1950 versus today, you can look at this graph, the trend line shows that there is a 2.5 times increase in the number of natural disasters from 1950 to 2005. This is a recent increasing trend in the frequency of all natural hazard, windstorm, floods, extreme heat waves, drought, and all of them. This is a global picture showing that there is an increase in number and all. There are countries which are going to be impacted by the sea level rise. One country which is our neighbor, Bangladesh, is likely to lose 16% of its area into the sea, and that creates some kind of problem for them in future by end of this century. Similarly, the other country in our neighborhood is Maldives, may also have problem, because Maldives consists of so many islands, and these islands are not very high in their elevation, and they may get submerged in future. They may, that is another country which may have some kind of serious consequence of sea level rise. There are many uncertain things, like we do not know how climate change will manifest itself in the regions, different region. It might have some impact, positive impact in some area and negative impact in some other area. Therefore, that is a gray area which need to be studied carefully. The second problem is that impact on sectors. In some sector it may have very different impact, for example, agriculture, health, water, different sectors are there. Climate change may have different impact on different sectors. So, that is also very uncertain as to what impact it will have in different sector. And the last one is that there could be some possible surprises. For example, certain diseases which were not there earlier might crop up now. Certain plants which may had today have some kind of resistance against certain pests or diseases may develop some kind of other problem in the future. So, therefore, there could be some surprises which might come after when the climate change start showing its impact. In India also we have this is an all India temperature series, time series, showing past 100 years how temperature have changed. Showing that temperature have been changing at least in past 2 decades. The temperature almost every year showing temperature on the positive side of the normal, which means that temperature in past 20 years have never been below normal in any of the year, which shows that there is a positive trend in temperature rise. But important thing to notice is that the temperature over India have not risen to that extent as compared to the global change. The temperature rise in India has been only 0.5 degree centigrade, as again 0.74 degree centigrade at the global level. So, we are in a way somewhat blessed, and temperature and the reason is there could be that there are certain part of the country, for example, some part of northwest India actually showing global dimming, that is temperature fall instead of rise over the time, and that is compensating to the all India average. And both maximum and minimum temperature, that is day temperature and the morning temperature, both are actually increasing, but the day temperature are increasing more rapidly as compared to the minimum temperature. That is minimum. And there have been trend, you can watch that these days the extreme temperatures are also taking place. In fact, but at the same time the cold night and cold days are decreasing in number, whereas hot night and hot days are increasing in number. There is very clear evidence in the country also. In rainfall thing is very interesting, that all India monsoon rainfall, if you look at year by year, is not changing much. They are sometimes positive, sometimes negative and all, but important thing is that if you look at the region, there are certain states, or we call it meteorological subdivision, where there is a negative trend in rainfall, and whereas in some state the positive trend is there. Here are 2 states, the Chhattisgarh and Jharkhand, where the rainfall has shown decrease in past 100 years. And similarly, there are states like coastal region of Maharashtra or Jammu Kashmir, on some they are showing increase in rainfall. So, and sum total is that total country as a whole we do not see much significant trend. There is one, this is a show, I am showing a box here, where in this box, consisting of part of central India and also over the peninsular India, they are showing very interesting development. They are showing that there is a increase in the very heavy and heavy rainfall events, whereas decrease in the low and moderate rainfall event, which is not good for the agriculture activity, because agriculture need water in different phases, and if suddenly 1 week rainfall occurs in a day, may not be good for the agriculture operations. And then second important thing, that the number of rainy days in this area is decreasing, so which is also impacting the agriculture. The number of flash flood, which is in the short duration flood, suddenly rain came and then or cloud burst occurs or something like that. Associated flash flood is increasing in number with time, in at least past 30 years data shows, whereas the overall flood event, the larger size flood event, are decreasing in number. So, these are different trend analysis which we have done to show that. Similarly, the number of tropical cyclone or cyclonic storms are actually decreasing with time, and that is also impacting some of the water requirement of the coastal region. Similarly, cyclonic disturbances are also decreasing in time, whereas the number of low pressure areas, the small size event, are actually increasing with time. Almost all ports of India are showing increase in sea level, but this increase is not that much. It is only on an average 100 years average is only 1.3 millimeter per year, but recent 20 years average is roughly 3 millimeter per year. And so, therefore, there is an increase in the sea level almost all the country, but we do not have that imminent what's called threat for to the sea, because most of our ports are not as bad as the ports like you have Bangladesh, or as I mentioned Maldives. There they have so many islands and their coastal area are more shallow as compared to India. Now, from the science, let me come to the climate change program, some policy aspect. I have been fortunate to have been part of the drafting team for the National Action Plan on Climate Change, and therefore, when we started this working, we had thought about doing this from the India perspective, because you cannot copy the climate change program of US or Japan or China for the India, because India we have unique situation, and therefore, the National Action Plan needed to be India centric, and therefore, we followed certain governing principle. And the first, this is the preamble of the National Action Plan, to achieve sustainable development path that simultaneously addresses economic and environmental objective. When we are moving on a development path, you can't halt that path on the name of sustainability. So, you need to create a balance between your environmental and economic objective, and the country like India cannot afford to halt the economic development agenda and take the environmental agenda forward at the cost of economic development. And therefore, we thought that climate change program should be a blending of these two, and that's, if you read the national plan, you will understand why it is so. And these are the principles we feel that we must follow Mahatma Gandhi dictum on sustainable lifestyle, high priority for improving human development, maintain and sustain rapid economic growth, greater focus on adaptation as compared to mitigation, and choose future development path to avoid emission instead of cutting the emission. And that is a very different kind of concept which we brought, avoiding emission. And we country as a thing, we can do it, that we have demonstrated in the past. This is the Mahatma Gandhi famous dictum: the earth has enough resources to meet people's need, but will never have enough to satisfy people's greed. And this is the key to development which we follow in the past, and that is the what's called the crux of the development pathway of the country. Well, I will give you most of the people, we generally feel that we are the country who are most unsustainable, and we violate all rules of environment. And general feeling is that the country like US, UK and all, they are most sustainable people, and they are the best in the lifestyle. Well, I will show you, this is an independent survey done by the National Geographic and Globiscan in 2008, and they brought out this survey on sustainable lifestyle by different countries, and this is they developed called an index called Green Index 2008. They chose 14 countries in the world, and India was one, and they chose all kind of advanced countries as well as developing countries to have a sort of equity in terms of participation in the survey. And large number of survey data were collected and analyzed, and here are the results. Before that, these are 4 parameters where they chose for the green index: the housing, how sustainable is your house; transportation; food habits and food style; and the disposal of the goods, how it is, and they are all given different kind of weightage and all. Each one of them had different variables. I am not going to describe those variables. And here are the results, that in housing India is at number 2, in the transportation India is at number 2, in the food India is number 1, in the disposal also India is number 2. And look at the bottom in all the things. The US in housing, in transportation is at the bottom. Food, Japan is at the bottom. Good disposal, again USA is the bottom. And here is the overall sustainability index. India shares number 1 position with Brazil in the overall sustainability index or green index, and at the bottom of this is USA. So, that shows that we are sustainable in some way, and that is the thing. And of course, let me mention here that this kind of the maximum contribution to the high sustainability index for India is coming from the villages, and that is the reason why we have such a high sustainability index. Now, human development is one area we had made good progress. In past 25-30 years, India has made good progress in improving the human development index, which comprises of 3 factors: long and healthy life, knowledge and decent standard of life. And these parameters comprise of the HDI, which is improving with time, but we are still way behind, and I will show how. India is somewhere in the middle of this graph, which is showing the human development index plotted against the per capita use of energy, and we are at the middle of somewhere, whereas Japan and US are at the close to the 0.9 or 0.99 level, and we are at 0.6 level, and therefore, this is one area which need to, so therefore, India is at the development stage where we need to reach to that level where we be able to address the human development to the maximum extent. And this is one figure I am showing, that energy use, just to show that India, an average Indian consumes something like 600 kilowatt hour of energy per annum, whereas an average US citizen consume 10,000 kilowatt hour of energy per annum. That shows that there is a differential of 18 times. Of course, again the contribution comes from the villages, not from the urban area of India. Food security, very interesting figure that an average Indian consumes 550 gram of food per day per capita, as compared to 980 gram of China and 2080 gram from USA. And therefore, this is important thing to note that today whatever is our production, something like 240 million tons of food grain we produce, is just sufficient to meet our 1.21 billion population. What will happen in future? And therefore, the food security issues are important. When we are going to have the population reaching to 1.3 billion by 2020 itself, what kind of requirement we will have, what kind of a per capita arable land requirement, that is dwindling like anything. With time, the urbanization is India is in fact becoming the top 5 countries to register very fast urbanization rate. So, people are moving from the rural areas to urban area. What kind of, so therefore, the land, arable land is decreasing in size. I think I will skip some of these things because the thing. So, then comes to adaptation program of India, climate change adaptation. There are 6 areas which are being focused by the country: agriculture, forestry, disaster management, water sector, coastal zones and health sector. These are 6 areas which India is focusing on, and in fact, if you look at this thing, I want to mention that the country's budget on adaptation also increasing with time. 11th plan had something like 2.6% of the GDP contributing to the adaptation. 12th plan is going to have much more than this. The mitigation policy of the country is that, as I mentioned, energy efficiency, that means trying to save the energy as much as possible, going for the mass transport system, and large number of cities in the country have been identified for mass transportation. Renewable energy sources, maximize that, whether it is solar, wind or several other means, we should maximize that. Nuclear and hydropower, also keep it an option for the clean energy, and enhance the focused research and development by the researcher in the country. And there the participation of young people, young scientists is important. There are many ministries, including the Ministry of Science, Technology and several other ministries have started the R&D program on climate change, and they have been inviting the participation of young scientists into this thing. Only these can solve and address the problem of the climate change which we are facing today. National plan, as I mentioned, there were this national plan was prepared keeping in mind the national requirement. What do we expect out of this national action plan? That was kept highest priority, and therefore, out of these 8 national missions which were launched as a part of the national plan, 3 were focusing on the mitigation, 4 were focused on adaptation, and 1 was focused on creating the strategic knowledge. We call it knowledge mission, where the knowledge is created for framing up the policy for adaptation and mitigation. In order to just to summarize towards end that India's approach towards climate change action is that the human development should be given the highest priority. The issue of poverty, the issue of hunger, the issue of providing the basic amenities to the poor people, and improving the human development by improving the health, living standard, all that is the highest priority should be provided, and that can be done only through a rapid and sustained economic growth. So, that need to be maintained, and but the economic growth, when we are trying to maintain, it will entail the emission, and there only comes the policy that we need to contain that emission, and therefore, mitigation should be done while maintaining an accelerated economic growth. We must be able to provide that policy kind of capping, that where the policy should be such to improve the sustainability. And the last one is that while we do all these things, we must economic growth should be done and kept at the higher pace, but at no cost we should compromise on the sustainability, and therefore, at all cost the sustainability should be preserved. So, this is the crux of the climate change program of the country. Now, then the basic question comes, as as a common man, what do we do? People at large, how they contribute towards reducing the carbon dioxide emission. And here are the three pillars of society which are actually helping to address the climate change impact. The business, industry, including transport and the power sector, the government, central government, state government, local government, all they can help reducing the climate change impact. And the last one is the public, and public at large can help a lot. And there are various things you must be knowing: the plantation of trees, optimizing energy use, mass transportation use, reduce wastage of food and water, minimize use of paper, try to have e-office. Basically, the idea is to reduce your footprint. When whatever activity which contributes to the emission, if you try to minimize that, that will reduce the footprint of each of us, and that is the ultimate goal, and that is the contribution one can do towards mitigating the climate change. Similarly, for example, sustainable transport, we can have carpooling, we can maximize the mass transportation use, try to go by the bicycle, so that minimum emission, there is no emission in cycling and all, so that can be seen, or going by walk, and that has been the lifestyle of the country, maximizing that thing, and unless otherwise important, we should not use the transport which emits emission. And saving energy use in the domestic side is very important. We should now, with the energy efficiency appliances are there. We have star rated equipment, 4 star rated or 3 star rated. Generally, it is preferred that at least 4 star rated equipment should be bought from the thing. It will do two things: that long term your electricity bill will be reduced, and it will contribute to the climate change. CFL use instead of normal bulb or thing. Switching off light and fan whenever not required, especially in the offices. At home people save, but in the offices people don't save. That should be encouraged. Optimize use of high energy appliances, air conditioner, room heater, refrigerator, etc. Use of weather and climate information. Wherever you go, you try and use the weather and climate information. This help a lot, in optimizing the wastage of many of things. And use of energy, renewable energy sources like solar, wind and biomass. The government is now encouraging people to buy such equipment. It will help reducing the climate change impact. Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you so much, sir, and thank you so much for your articulated and thought-provoking presentation. As you rightly pointed out that this debate is not limited to scientists, now it becomes the every man's issue and concern. You have also articulatedly discussed the various causes of climate change, highlights of national guidelines, being as a member and part of that framing the guidelines, where India stands overall sustainability index, key elements of India's policy on mitigation, and many more issues. Wonderful presentation, and thank you so much. So now we'll invite questions from our
Sure,
viewers. Please, yes. SDM College Ujre. Yes, speak.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm the student from Adaptation College, sir. And my question is, what is the impact of depleting ozone layer on climate? Ozone layer.
What is the impact of ozone layer on climate?
Okay, let me tell you that this ozone is at the stratosphere. You know, normally there is a ozone in the atmosphere also, but the maximum ozone lies in the stratosphere. That has no link to the global warming. Ozone layer has a different impact. It protects you from the ultraviolet and cosmic rays. It actually forms in the tropical region and spread in the extratropical region, and therefore, this layer is nothing to do with the global warming, but it actually helps protecting us from the dangerous rays coming and incoming radiation from the sun.
Thank you, sir. Any more question? Sir, meanwhile, I would like to ask you that can volcano eruptions affect climate change?
No, volcano eruption has nothing to do with the climate change, because this is an underground or under earth activity, which is basically relate to the tectonic and the geological activity.
Yes, sir.
The climate change mainly concerned with the activity on ground by the humans and by the various activity which is taking place in the biosphere.
Yes, sir.
And it has nothing to do with the eruption of the volcano.
Okay. And the type of vegetation, that also?
As I said, it is a biosphere, which
Yes,
is
sir.
so it comprises of plant, ocean, water bodies, human being, and all kind of things.
Sir, I have little. Yeah, climate change have impact on everybody life and sensitize the peoples at last.
Yes, sir. Sir, just a minute. Srinagar se call. Sir, call from Srinagar. Yes, Srinagar. Please
This
speak.
is Professor Romshu from Kashmir University. Dr. Akhilesh Gupta, thank you very much for this excellent review of the climate change scenario and different aspects of the governance. How at the national level we are trying to mitigate and adapt to the climate change. Now, I have specific two questions. One is about the national government is aware of, conscious of this scenario, and we have National Climate Change Action Plan, and at the state level we have state action plans for the climate change. Now, if you look into these state level climate change action plans, many of these action plans have been outsourced by the state governments to the same consultants or agencies. As you said that India needs an India-centric climate change action plan. Each of the states of the India need a state-centric action plans. Now, if you look at these action plans, there is a lot of overlap. I mean, not much science has gone into it. I mean, is there any mechanism at the central government level that there is, some review or peer review or some sort of, quality check of these state level action plans, because the roadmap for mitigating the action plan is based on these action plans. That's one question. Second question, as you said, that one of those 9 missions we have is, one is about the knowledge mission. As you know that it is at the national level, if you look, it is not the individual institute, it is not the individual scientist who can generate the knowledge on the climate change. There is a need for networking of these institutes, the individuals all across the country. If you really want to generate a credible knowledge on the climate science. So what are the efforts being done at the UGC level or at the national level? You have been in the DST also, you have been. So what efforts are being made to put in place these knowledge networks so that we can have a credible knowledge on the climate change? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. These are very interesting questions, and I really like both of them, and I will respond to both the questions one by one. Question number one is very right. You are absolutely right that after the National Action Plan came into the action, afterward the state government were asked to prepare state action plans, and state government did not have the expertise to do that, and rightly so. They have given to the they have outsourced it, given to the agencies which are in fact some of these agencies are international agencies, and therefore the question which you are asking, that how do they bring the Indianness or the regional feeling, particularly state centric thing when they are preparing. Well, the state governments are, even though they outsource it, they have an internal, most of them have the internal committees, and the draft were discussed by the state government at this state level, and when they submitted the draft to the Ministry of Environment and Forest, there were two levels of committee. One committee is called screening committee, which met at the expert level, and then there was steering committee, which is, in fact I was member of the steering committee of that thing, and these state action plans were screened properly, thoroughly, and then only approval takes place. Whatever changes suggested to state government, in between we return most, in fact 20 something like 18 state action plan came, we accepted only 5 and returned all of them to state government back, saying that these are not conforming to what we need at the state level. Anyway, coming to the second question about this network thing, well, till very recently I was the head of the climate change program of Department of Science and Technology, which was coordinating two national missions. The one is knowledge mission also, and we have now we are going for a network already for these Himalayan states. A separate network is being developed, and all the institutions, there were 120 institutions in the state, in these 12 states of Himalaya were requested to give the pre-proposals, and they have submitted, and out of these proposals they have been selected and given back to these teams for the submission of final something. So therefore all efforts are being done. If you think that your institution is not been included or there is something, yes, please, the two persons here sitting here, my left is Dr. Rajesh and to my right is Dr. Anand. They are from the climate change program of DST, coordinating this national mission on the strategic knowledge on climate change.
Sir, call from Calcutta. Yes, Calcutta, please speak.
Thank you so much. Let me congratulate Professor Gupta on an extremely informative talk. I'll ask 3 questions, all very brief. The first is slightly technical about the science part of it. He mentioned in passing about certain developments in northwest India, and he used the term temperature deeping in that context. He seems to imply that there are some places where temperature dipped in the long term, and that had contributed to the general averaging of India's climate change progress. If he could elaborate on that, if possible. And secondly, he also referred to the political and diplomatic aspects of the problem. He didn't speak much about it, but in passing he referred to the problem of Bangladesh, that it stood to lose about 16% of its territory in the coming century or so. What are going to be the diplomatic implications of this problem for a country like India, a small neighbor right next to it, threatened with loss of substantial territory? Would it lead to, for instance, large-scale migration and so on? How does one prepare for that? And third, I think he referred also to this survey called Green Index, where he said India was, along with Brazil, at the very top of the list of sustainability. What were the yardsticks which were considered for this survey? It would be very useful for students and researchers alike if you could elaborate on that a bit. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. All your questions are very well articulated. Question number one, you about the science, as I say, the global dimming or temperature dimming, we call it. In the northwest India, some parts of northwest India, there is an interesting event which you must have heard, is called aerosol in the atmosphere. These aerosols coming from various activities, including the dust particle and the sand particle, which are in the atmosphere, particularly in Rajasthan and adjoining areas. Actually, these particles obstruct the incoming radiation, and therefore the total radiation reaching at the ground level is lesser than the normal. And as I said, if the incoming radiation is less, the ground gets lesser heated, and therefore the outgoing radiation will also not be able to heat up the atmosphere, and that is all. So therefore there is a decrease in temperature, observed decrease in the temperature in some part of northwest India, contributing to this. Second question you asked about what was the political question. You are absolutely right. I didn't want to mention much except to mention that 16% lesser area is likely over in Bangladesh. You know, Bangladesh is one country which has one of the highest population density in the world. And interestingly, that population density is maximum in the southern side, where the threat is more. Bangladesh has got so many islands and lot of agriculture and fishery related activities going on this thing. If these islands are going to be threatened, what will happen? You are absolutely right. The migration is one threat which India can expect from the country like India. And since Bangladesh is landlocked from three sides from India, and so therefore that becomes the natural destination. And when 16% area become less in that thing, the population density increases several times, and that is the thing. So I don't want to say beyond this thing. The last point you mentioned about what was that point about? Was it related to some? I forgot the last point, I think. Oh, green decks. Yeah, green decks. Well, there are these green decks are going. It is very complicated. It is available. Report is available on the website. You can look at it. I don't want to elaborate on that.
Thank you, sir. We are having one question, text question from Itanagar. Please put that text question. Yes, sir. Itanagar. Sir, volcanic eruption do affect climate short and long term as smoke and dust?
Well, you see, you must understand what we are discussing is climate change on a very long term. Volcano eruption can impact because when the particles, aerosol particles come out, it can impact on a shorter term on a weather side. But long time, we are talking about impact over centuries and all. That impact has not been seen to that extent. In fact, the bigger impact is seen from the activity man-made, because volcano eruption may not take place on a day-to-day basis, but the activity coming like coal burning or wood burning or something, these are more on a routine basis. And in fact, you must have heard there is a concept of we call Asian brown cloud, ABC, and came from that thing, because Asians are practicing these kind of thing, and that is why these aerosol emissions are causing some kind of climate change. That's my answer to that.
Any other question, sir?
Sir, as I,
Sir, SDM college हो रहे हैं. Yes. Hello.
This is from SDM College. We have a that it is climate change. Does it really bother much on the conditions of the people, especially in the southern part? Yeah? And we are coastal and in the coastal and parts of India.
I couldn't get.
Thank you.
Yes.
I couldn't get the question.
Sir, please.
in view of climate change recently, we are also working on some of the programs for human capacity buildings. So what you emphasize on the at the country levels, as you are on the senior position in the education system. So how you visualize the human capacity developments in education systems and also the deployments and the job.
Yeah, I got your point. You see, this is very interesting that this today we in fact India is a country having so much of knowledge resource in the country. We don't have any dearth of people working on things. In fact, some of our scientists are world recognized scientists in climate change, but still we are lagging behind in capacity because of several reasons. One, that we work in silos. We always try to work disjointedly and we never work together. The second thing is that whatever work is done in the lab is never being taken to the society, and whatever work is being done is never taken to the policy, and therefore there is a disconnect which is in. And the capacity building program of the Department of Science Technology and many other departments is actually focusing on integrating people and institution so that we can work with in tandem with the society.
Last question. Sir, last question from Itanagar. Again, there are various theories of climate change. Ocean current is a factor of climate change. Will you please explain how?
Oh, that's very good what you mentioned. These which you mentioned about this ocean current. I have not talked about the climate change which is taking on a beyond century. I mean, the climate change is anthropogenic, is of 100 years old, but there are climate change taking place on millions of year scale. I have mentioned in the beginning that you have the glacier age and interglacier age. Actually, the ocean currents are working on that thing. Ocean currents are those that actually work helping to create an equilibrium between the cold atmosphere and the hot atmosphere, that is the tropical area and the extratropical area, and there the everything is getting mixed, the ocean is water is getting mixed. And whenever there is a larger scale climate change, the ocean currents they have big contribution, and I don't want to elaborate on that because I don't have time, but there is a concept, just like atmosphere is mixing from north to south, the ocean currents also contributing the mixing of water from north to south.
Thank you so much, sir, for the wonderful presentation. Thank you, viewers.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, sir.